hard. So most people like when we look at things like ChatGPT, and we're just like wondering how the heck does this thing actually even work? And we are not going to be talking about that today. Eventually we will, but we need to like really master the fundamentals. There's a lot to discuss before you can actually begin to understand ChatGPT. There's a lot of videos out there that try to like summarize ChatGPT, and I don't think it does it justice. I think the best videos are out there are the ones that actually try to build a transformer from scratch. We are not doing that today also. Again, we need to build the foundations because we're starting from zero. We're assuming that people here don't know anything about programming or anything, and we're teaching people how to program in Python because Python is a fundamental language for AI. That's a language that you just need to really dominate. And that's what we're doing. Today we're talking about specifically lists and dictionaries. Lists and dictionaries are something that in computer science we call data structures. And data structures are the essence behind how AI can actually store facts and memories, kind of. It's a lot more complicated than that. Usually when we're talking about specifically like ChatGPT, for example, we have to use certain mathematical structures known as matrices. And for that we actually have to study linear algebra, a branch of mathematics. But again, one step at a time. I don't want people to get clustered and mixed up and overwhelmed over so many things that you have to learn. AI doesn't have to be. AI is complicated. Okay, so learning AI takes work. It's hard. Mastering AI takes lots of work, and it's very hard. But it doesn't need to be complicated, right? So just taking it one step at a time, this is how we're going to be able to master AI and actually build things that are useful and just transform, just make the world a better place, right? That's kind of my goal. I want to use AI, dominate AI, like really achieve mastery with AI. This is just me documenting my journey as well. And, using that, harnessing AI to actually do good stuff for the world, right? Make the world a better place. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's what we're all about at AllMind. And we talk about AI, philosophy, technology, computer science, mathematics, everything. And how we can transform the way we think and learn with AI as well. If that's something that interested you, then just join, subscribe, share the video. With that being said, let's begin. So, what the heck is going on here? So last time we actually talked about a little bit about structured randomness. I think that was one of the previous videos we talked about in our AI Unlock series. We talked about a little bit of structured randomness and the importance of structured randomness. So everything that we're doing so far is known as rule-based AI. Rule-based AI is like the first level of AI because it's all about determinism, right? It's all about, okay, if this happens, then do these set of instructions, right? Instructions or following a set of instructions or following a step of procedures is known as algorithms, right? So algorithms in computer science are just step-by-step procedures. And last time we were talking about such algorithms. We were talking about for loops. And, well, actually, no, we haven't talked about for loops yet. We were talking about while loops and conditional statements like the if statement, the else statement, and that allows the program in computer science to choose a specific branch, a specific path that it's supposed to execute, right? We talked about different instructions, the print function, right? Again, these are just basic programming concepts that you learn in a basic programming 101 course, specifically in Python. And we talked about how, if we're trying to build an AI, maybe a self-driving car, using just rule-based AI, that's going to be very complicated. We're going to have to do a lot of if-else statements, right? To cover like pretty much all possible scenarios. That's why we need to implement structured randomness. And we talked a little bit about structured randomness, right? Building a little mini AI detector to detect if it's bright enough or not bright enough in a room. This is not really an AI detector. This is just like to get the point across on structured randomness and to practice a little bit of our while loops. Again, this is not really an AI programming. It's still rule-based. It's just to introduce you guys to the random library because we're going to be using that library later on when we're actually building real machine learning projects that actually use structured randomness and more sophisticated statistics and probability theory. But like I said before, I'm trying to build slowly, taking our time to really digest all these concepts. Now, in our Python series, we're talking about today specifically about lists and about dictionaries. Now what are those? So in this little program that we coded out here, let's just break this down. Let's focus on the first line. Yeah, let's just focus on the first line right here. So let me just, okay. So this is a list, right? Let's just focus on the concept of a list. A list is a data structure. Now, in programming, we talked about data, right? We talked about how there's a string data types. We talked about how, this is a string data type. This is a string. A string data type is just text. It's just text, and you define them through the quotations. You can define it with these quotations or the single quotations. That's it. That's a string data type. We talked about integers, right? These are integers. And I think we talked a little bit about floats so far. So these are floats. They're basically numbers, but with decimals in them. So like, for example, this is an integer. And yeah, okay, let me just, my phone went off. I keep forgetting to turn off my notifications. Anyways, so what's going on here? Okay, so this is okay, yeah, my bad. Let me just, there we go. So this is an integer. The 2 is an integer, but this is also 2, right? It's also the number 2, but as you can see, it says 2.0, so that's actually a float. Now, again, we already talked about this. We introduced a little, I don't think I've talked about Booleans yet. Booleans are another type of data, a data type. And Booleans are really just true. It has only 2 values, 2 possible values. So while a string data type can have a whole bunch of types of values, right? You could literally write anything you want. And while an integer is all integer numbers, right? All numbers from negative infinity all the way to positive infinity, right? And floats are really all the real numbers, basically. All the real numbers, that includes the decimals from negative infinity all the way to positive infinity, right? Booleans only have 2 possible values. And that is true, and that is false. That's it. Now, what are they used for? Well, we're going to talk about that today as well. And right over here, we're using the true value, but we'll get to that. So, lists, so those are values, those are data types. Those are like just the, the content that our machine is going to be manipulating. Data is extremely important because in computer science, whatever programming language you're using, right, whether it's Python, Java, C, C++, Python is just the simplest programming language and it's the most popular right now for AI, that's why we're using it. No matter, independent of the programming language, because they're all just different flavors of the same thing, right? They're all just algorithms at the end of the day. And they all follow a science of algorithms, right? At the end of the day, we are dealing with data, the content, right? And we're dealing with the manipulation of that data, and we're dealing with the storage of that data. Now, we already talked about data. We already talked about how we have numbers, and we have letters, or words, or phrases, known as strings, and numbers known as either integers or floats, right? And we also have true and false values, known as Boolean values. Now, this is the content, right? This is the essence of all content in the internet, and in software, basically. They all boil down to those data types. There are other data types as well, but those are the basics. Those are the most important ones right now that build all other concepts. So that's the content. But we actually have to want to do stuff with that content, right? And that's where we have to use algorithms like the if statement, the else statement, the loops, like while loops, for example. These are called control statements. We're trying to control our data. We're trying to do stuff with that data, right? But what about for managing data, like storing data? Back to AI, we human beings, we think, right? But we also remember, we don't just think. We need memory. The whole point, like the only way I'm actually able to record this video is because I'm remembering everything that I'm saying, if that makes sense, right? So otherwise I would be like, wait a minute, where am I? What's my name, right? Like, what's going on, right? So we have short-term memory and long-term memory. AI also has memory. But the concept of memory is nothing new. In computer science, the concept of memory has always, been a thing, right? Memory, at the end of the day, is just storing that data somewhere where the computer can just access it again. And there are many ways to store data. The basic ways to store data are through data structures. And the 2 most basic data structures that there are out there are lists and dictionaries. So how do you define a list? A list you define with these guys. And a dictionary you define with, these guys. the curly brackets. But let's talk about a list first. So, in a list, you can put stuff in a list, right? I can put anything in a list. I can put a string data type. So this is a string, right? I'm putting the string inside the list. I can also put a number, like the number 13. I can also put a Boolean, like the Boolean true. But let's just hang on for a second. I need a way to, Python is not really detecting, like Python is treating all of this as if it was some kind of string, and it's going to be messy. It's going to be like, okay, what is going on? We need to find a way to separate the values on our lists, and we do that with commas. That's a comma, and we put a comma right here, and there we go. A lot more cleaner, right? So I have a list that's a string. This right here is a string. This is an element in my list, right? This is called an element. I have a number or an integer value in my list in the second position, and in the third position I have a Boolean. Simple enough, right? And we also talked about variables, right? So I can actually abstract this list and just call it whatever. I can literally call it whatever. And so I can access this list with the variable name, whatever. And then I could just print that list out. Let me just run this code cell to define it, and then there we go. See, I'm calling the list. Now, I can actually access the elements in this list. And accessing an element in a list is known as indexing a list. Now, in order to index a list, each element in a list contains a specific index, or like, yeah, an index number. So the first position in a list is the number 0. The second position is a number 1, and the third position is a number 2, and so on and so forth. So if I say, hey, what's in the 4th position of my list, it's going to be the number 3. That's the index 3, basically. So it's always going to be n minus 1, if that makes sense. So for the third position is actually going to be index. So the index of the third position is going to be 2, right? The index for the 10th position is going to be 9. The index for the first position is going to be 0. So it's always going to be n minus 1. So it always starts off at 0. So the first position is 0. And the second position is 1, and the third position is 2, and so on and so forth. So if I want to access the first position, or the element in the first position, I need to index it with the address 0. Address 0, right? How do I do that? Well, that's how I do it. That's it. And then just press enter, and there you go. It's pretty simple. Again, Python is awesome. What about like the third element in the list? Oh, do I put 3? No, I don't put 3. I'm going to get an error because the list index is out of the range. There's only 3 elements. Oh yeah, but isn't this guy in the third position? Yes, but we're not indexing by the third position in the list is index number 2, not index number 3, if that makes sense. And there you go. If I want to access 13, well, you guessed it, it's going to be 1. And there you go. So that's how you index a list. That's the basics of it. There's a whole bunch of things when it comes to lists. Like, a whole bunch of things. I always tell people, don't memorize stuff in Python. Don't memorize everything in Python. Whatever you do, if you're taking a course in Python, even if you're following along in this series, don't memorize everything. Memorization is good, and it's useful. It's good to use like flashcards, for example, but when it comes to programming, or when it comes to things that require you to build or think more creatively, the best thing that you can do is actually learning by doing things. So if you want to learn Python, don't learn it just in isolation. Actually know what you want to do with Python. Do I want to build an AI chatbot, for example? Do I want to build an AI application? Or do I just want to do AI research? Like, define what you want to do and then reverse engineer the concepts in Python that you need to learn. So I'm only teaching you the essentials. The most important things in Python that you need to learn. This is why I'm not doing an isolated Python course. I don't believe in isolated Python course. I believe that you first define what you want to do, and then you reverse engineer. So since we're trying to, understand AI, master AI, build AI applications, and do AI research, then we're only going to be focusing on the essential concepts that are required for that. In this case, the list is very important, and learning how to index a list is also very important. So right now, that's the basics of it. That's the gist of it, right? Now, what about a dictionary? So, before we get to a dictionary, let's go back to, this example right here. So here's a list with a bunch of elements. They're all strings. Wake sensor, scan room, charge battery, right? So these are different tasks that our AI can do. Now, once we get later on into AI agents, way later on, after we actually master all of these concepts, you realize that this is actually going to be very important because we're going to be in like later on when we're dealing with like AI agents, we're going to be dealing with a very specific data structure in a file format known as JSON. We have like literally key value pairs, and in that JSON, the LLM is going to have to like the LLM is going to have to like parse specific key values in that JSON documentation in order to detect what it needs to do. So right now that sounds probably like, if you're watching this and you're a beginner, that sounds like gibberish to you. That's fine. But what you need to understand is that when we're creating AI agents, so LLMs, ChatGPT, they're just predicting the next token. But when we're doing AI agents, these LLMs are going to be connected with separate Python tools, right? Or just tools in general. But it needs to know what tool to use, if that makes sense. So there's going to be a little mechanism, a little middleware or a bridge that's going to basically look at the LLM's response. The LLM is going to be like, oh, I need to use this, this, and this, and this tool. And a little mechanism, a little middleware is going to be detecting what tool the LLM needs to use. It's going to parse out that tool, and it's going to compare it to a list of tools, right? A list of tools or a list of tasks, right? Here's a list of tasks or a list of functions in the form of a more sophisticated data structure like a dictionary in a JSON format, for example. There are many ways to do this, and it's going to execute that tool. But right now, just to learn the basics of Python, here's an example. So let me just remove this. So yeah, we can index this. We already talked about indexing, and I can index the third task, for example, with 2, charge battery. There you go. Basics of the list. Super simple. Now, I'm going to teach you something known as the for loop. Now, before I do that, let's talk about append. So append is just an interesting way to add something to a list. So the append method, this is a method, by the way. In programming, we have methods and we have classes. But I'm not going to teach classes right now. But just so you know, methods, this is how you define a method. So I think we already talked about methods last time, but just a quick recap. A method is just a function. And we already talked about functions in the first episode, I believe, just a little bit of functions. We'll dive deeper later on, but in the first episode we talked about functions, and methods are functions, but not all functions are methods. But in order to understand the difference, we have to understand something known as classes and object-oriented programming, but that's not very important right now. Just know that methods are functions. They're tools. They're extra stuff that Python provides us, or that we can create ourselves, in order to carry out a specific task. Now, what is the specific task that I want to create that the append method allows me to do? It allows me to append or add something to my list. So I can add literally anything to the list. So here in this code cell, I'm just indexing this list. I'm accessing this element from the list, but I can actually add stuff to the list. So I can call my list and I write dot append, so I'm calling the append method, and then I can add whatever it is that I want to add. So let's add, I don't know, make breakfast, because I am very hungry and it's 12:50 and I haven't even eaten breakfast. Make breakfast. I'm probably just gonna have brunch. Anyways, append, make breakfast, and then just run that. So if I call my list again, see right here? Now I have a fourth element in my list called make breakfast. So that's something that's pretty useful when we're dealing with more data manipulation later down the line. Now, second concept is the for loop. Let's talk about the for loop. We already talked about an interesting loop known as the while loop. So while this is true, or while this is happening, or while this condition applies, then continue repeating this set of instructions. Once that thing is no longer true, then we exit out of the loop. That was the while loop from last time. And we're talking about the while loop again here. This time, for the for loop is different, but it's still pretty simple. For loop is when you have a specific data structure that you want to iterate over. What the heck does that iterate mean? It just means jumping across. You can visualize it that way. Visualize it as like I'm jumping across a data structure. So we already talked about the list data structure. So in a for loop, I am going to jump across. So I am going to jump across, jump across my tasks list. That's what I would call it in natural language. That's how I would say it in natural language. How would you say that in Python? I'm saying that for an element in my list called tasks, that right there, that statement, for an element in my list called tasks, I'm telling Python to, hey, jump over my list or the elements in my list. I'm telling it to iterate over my list, right? I'm telling the computer to sequentially, right, to sequentially iterate over my list from zero all the way through. How would you code that in Python? Well, in Python, you would code it out like this. For elements in tasks. So this is actually the real code. This is just an example in natural language. This right here is the real code for element in tasks. Tasks is the name of our list, and element is, well, each element. Now, let me explain something. It can be called anything you want. I'm calling it element right now, but you can call it whatever you want. You can call it I, right? For index in tasks, right? What do we want to do? So Python in this line right here is just iterating over a list. But what do you want Python to do with I, or with the element? So for example, I'm Python, I'm jumping over my first element, I'm jumping over my second element, I'm jumping over my third element. Okay, every time I'm jumping over an element, what do you want me to do with that element? So if I start from my first element, what do you want me to do with that first element? That's what Python is asking you. What do you want me to do with the second element? What do you want me to do with the third element? So for each element, no matter what element you're at, whether if it's the first, second, or third, in the list tasks, I want you to say hi. There you go. So what Python is doing right here, it's going to the first element, right? And it's printing hi. And it's doing this. It's going over the second element and it's going to print hi. It's going over the third element and it's going to print hi. Now, since it prints 4 highs, but the reason why it's printing 4 highs is because we have a fourth element in our list right here that we already added. So this is actually the more accurate list right here because we added a fourth element called make breakfast. So it jumps over the fourth element and it prints hi. So it prints hi how many times? 4 times. Why? Because there's 4 elements in our list. So that's the basic of a for loop. Bunch of things that you can do just with the concept of a for loop. That's introducing you to it. Here's a more fun example, right? With an icon, a robot icon, right? So getting back to our AI example. So for T in tasks, again, you can call it T, you can call it I, you can call the element whatever you want. Because the interesting about it is that you can actually call that element back. So if I run this example, it iterates over the first element, and what it's going to print, it's going to print this icon right here, and it's also going to print the element. So you can actually tell Python to do something with that element, right? So for example, if I have another list that has numbers in it, 1, 2, 3, and I'm iterating over that list. So for a number in another list, so I can tell it to, hey, for every time you jump over a list, I want you to print, I don't know, whatever. I'm not creative right now. So it's going to do that. It's going to print it 3 times because why? There's 3 elements on a list. But I can also tell Python to print the element itself. And that's what it's going to do. It's going to print whatever, and it's going to print the element inside our list. Or I could just tell it to just print the element in our list. And that's what it's going to do. Or I could tell it to add the number 1 to each element in our list. See, so it added 1, 2, and 1, so that's going to give us 2. It's going to add 1 to 2, and that's going to give us 3. It's going to add 1 to 3, and that's going to give us 4. I could tell it to multiply, right? I could tell it to do a bunch of things. You can do anything you want with for loops. And in this simple example, all it's doing is just printing this emoji with its corresponding element, if that makes sense. Very basic stuff. Now let's build on top of that. So we talked about lists. Now we're going to talk about dictionaries. So dictionaries are a very cool way of storing data in the form of a key value pair. What the heck does that mean? So let me explain. So this time with dictionaries, you define them with the curly brackets. Now, Let me explain. So, I could store what is known as a key, and this key can represent anything. It could represent a name. So, for example, my name is Tony, and I can link or connect that key with a specific value. So that value can be anything you want, anything that is related to the key. In this case, my name. So it can be anything. It can be my age, for example. I'm 22. I think. Am I 22? Or am I 23? I think I'm 22 or 23. I keep forgetting my age for some reason. But anyways, 22, that is going to be an element in our dictionary. And again, if we want to separate an element from our dictionary, we separate it with a comma. And then we can start talking about another. So let me just close it. And let's put in another name. Let's put the name June. Yeah, let's put in another name, June. June is 24, I think. Yeah, she'll probably kill me. I think she's 22 or 23. I'm terrible with age. If I can't remember my own age, I'm definitely not gonna remember the age of somebody close to me. But oh man, my computer's about to die. Why does this always happen during recordings? There we go. Now let's put in another name. This time, let's just put anything else. I don't really care. So let's just put 33. I don't know. This is a dictionary. So each element in the dictionary is separated by a comma as well. But the key difference here is that I'm not going to be accessing this element right here through indexes. So in a dictionary, I can access this. So first I'm going to add a variable name to this dictionary. I'm going to assign it a variable. I'm going to call it my dictionary. There you go. I'm going to run that. And I can access something from my dictionary through its key. And the way I do that is like this. So let's see, Tony. So I'm accessing it through the keys. So if I want to access the value 22, I just have to put in the key Tony. If I'm accessing the age for June, it's 24. That's her age. If I want to access the value for test, I just write in test. So instead of accessing a specific value by its index, you access the value by its key, or the name of the key, right? So that's the essence of dictionaries. You can organize your dictionary so it looks like this. Many people do that. It doesn't matter. But yeah, putting all of this together, dictionaries are important for memory, for AI, not just in terms of storing data, because in general that's how computers store data. This is just basics computer science 101. But when it comes to like storing data, and that's what memory is all about, you got your long-term data, your long-term memory, and then you got your short-term memory, right? That's how your computer works, right? You got your RAM, random access memory, the temporary data that your computer is holding while it's doing its operations, and then you got its more long-term memory, its storage, right? Your disk storage. So your computer, if you go and search up your computer disk storage, it could be 500 gigabytes, it could be a terabyte or 2 terabytes. And then there's your computer RAM, which is how much memory it could hold while it's doing its stuff. When it comes to AI also has memory. The way AI stores facts or it stores knowledge is through a very specific data structure known as a matrices. But that's a concept that we have to learn in linear algebra. But no matter what you're doing, when it comes to computer science or AI, memory, the key concept of memory in storing, it's all about storing data. So the key concept of memory in AI, whatever you do, is all about, the essence of that is all about data. Let me repeat that one more time. The essence of memory when it comes to AI is data storage. So when it comes to understanding data storage and mastering data storage, it's all about mastering data structures, including complicated data structures like matrices. But right now, learning the basics of programming, if you're starting from zero, lists and dictionaries are the most important ones that you want to learn, especially when you want to get to learning AI down the line. So that's about it. Combining all the concepts we've learned so far, from previous videos and everything, here's a little program that I want you just to copy, code it out in your Jupyter notebook, and test it. So here's a little rule-based AI. Again, this is still just rule-based AI. So here, what's happening here is, here we're saying while true. What does that mean? It means that while true, so while the true value is true, which is always going to be true, repeat the loop. So it's always going to repeat the loop. The only way it's going to break the loop is if this condition is true. So let's run this program just to explain. So right here is asking for my name. So the first line, Python is entering the loop, right? It's defining a data structure, an empty dictionary. This is an empty dictionary right here. So we're calling it memory. It's reading the second line, or the third line, and it's entering the loop, or while loop. Right here, we're using a very specific function in Python known as an input function. This allows us to have user input. And that's very important when it comes to chatbots, user input. So user inputs in Python allows you to input data as a user into the system, into a data structure, or into, a variable. So here, if I type something right here, if I type something and I press enter, this value right here is going to be stored as a string inside this variable, the user. So that's all you need to know when it comes to user inputs. You can learn more about that later, like separately if you want, but that's what it's doing right now. So when I type in something, well, it's asking for my name, right? So let's actually type my name, Tony. And once I press enter, Python is gonna be like, okay, it's gonna check, did user type in quit? No, the user did not type in quit. So I'm just going to ignore that. If I were to type in quit, like if I type in quit, it's gonna break the loop. It's just gonna exit out the loop and the program finishes. But since I didn't type in quit, if I typed in Tony, the program is gonna continue to the next line. If user in memory, so what is it saying? It's saying that if Tony is in the data structure memory, then do this. I'm not in the data structure memory because this is the first time we're running the program, right? So since I'm not in the data structure memory, it's going to run this instead. That's why it says else. So if this is true, then execute this. Otherwise, or else, check out our previous videos on if else, execute these lines of codes. So in our case, since this is the first time we're typing in our name Tony, it's going to ignore this line and it's going to execute this line right here, this scope, right here. And let's just press Tony, enter, and look at that. So it's going to execute this block right here. It's going to execute drink equals input, what's your favorite drink? So here we have another input function. So that means it's asking us to enter our favorite drink, and it's going to store it into the variable drink. So I'm just going to put water because I'm kind of boring. So I press enter, and it's going to be like, got it, Tony. I'll remember water. So here, as you can see, it actually mentioned me. It actually said my name. The reason it said my name is because right here, the program is indexing, and it's indexing user. So remember, user, hold on. Yeah, user is just my name, right? So here, user is already stored in my user variable, right? Here, what we're doing is we're storing in this line of code, we're storing user, we're storing Tony, and we're pairing it up with a specific value. What is that specific value? Well, my favorite drink. So right here in this line, we're creating a new element in our dictionary. I didn't talk about this before, but you know how in a list, we talked about here in the list, we can add a new element to our list using the append? Well, in order to add another element to our dictionary, this is what we do. If we want to add a specific element to our dictionary, we type in our dictionary name, the name of our dictionary, and with these, I forgot what these are called, brackets, no, they're not brackets. Are they brackets? I think they're brackets. Yeah, they're called brackets, yes. With these brackets, I'm terrible with names, I'm sorry. You define the brackets, you type in user, so you type in the specific key that you want to link it to link it to a specific value. So in our case, user is basically what we already defined up here. So whatever it is that the user actually typed in. So we typed in Tony, and it's going to be stored in our user variable. So this guy right here is going to be Tony. Tony. So let's just write that out separately. Tony. This is actually what's really happening. This is what's happening. So Python is actually adding the key value Tony to the key Tony to the value water. So it's a key value pair. That's what a dictionary is, right? So it's adding Tony to water. Let me just fix this thing once too. Okay, there we go. Cool. It's gonna be adding this to. Oh geez, that's not good. Keeps falling. Okay, yeah, there we go. Don't fall. Okay. It's gonna be adding Tony it's going to be adding Tony to water. It's going to be pairing Tony with water, and it's going to add that to our dictionary. That's what's happening right here. So whatever it is that you typed in user, it's going to pair that with whatever it is that you typed in for your favorite drink to the data structure memory. And then what's it going to do? It's going to be like, got it, Tony, I'll remember that drink. So this is what is known as a formatted string. And a formatted string, you can type in a data or a piece of data in your specific string message, which you define with an F right here. A lot of information, I know. But what I want you guys to do, and this thing keeps falling, I need to really find a way to fix this. Anyways, what I want you guys to do is copy this code, play with it, break it down, try to remove something from it, and see what happens after that. Copy the code, feed it to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you explain this code for me line by line? That's how you can truly learn. You don't learn by just watching 50-hour courses or just reading 20 books on Python. No, you actually learn by actually writing Python and experimenting with it, tinkering around with it, right? Anyways, so if I type in my name again, what's going to happen? It's going to be like, hey, welcome back, Tony. Your water is ready. Whatever. So that's how our little AI bot remembered it. Our AI bot remembered our name and remembered that our favorite drink is water. So if I just type in my name again, it's going to keep welcoming me back. And it's going to remember that my drink is water. If I type in quit, then the program just finishes. It exits out of the loop, right? So it keeps running in a loop. It keeps checking, okay, what is your name? Did the user type in quit? They didn't. Okay. Is the user in their memory? If it is, let's execute this line. Okay, if they're not in memory, that means that we're going to ask them what their favorite drink is so that we can store it in our memory. That is what is going on in this little, very simple, rule-based AI. So before transformer models, before all of this ChatGPT, before deep learning, rule-based AI was the thing back long ago. But that's about it. What I want you guys to do, I want you to go to this website right here, w3schools.com, and I want you to practice. So there's a lot that we didn't cover because Python is infinite. There's so many things in Python. But I want you guys to practice. Go to this website right here. You don't have to go over everything. Don't go into that mindset you need to learn everything. But just practice. Go over here, go to lists, Python lists, and practice every single exercise in the list area. So practice accessing list items. So let's go to that for a second. Here we're talking about indexing. Here we're talking about negative indexing. So that's another concept that you would need to learn, right? So here if I put in -1, it's going to access the last element in the list. So instead of me having to count the list and then typing in the index, I can actually use -1 to access the last item of a list. You can access the range of a list, right? So here it's going from 2 to 5. So it's going from cherry all the way to the final or fifth element. So you're just accessing a specific range of a list. And there's just many ways that you can manipulate lists. You can change items in a list. There are many ways that you can change items in a list. You can add something to a list, remove something in a list. You can loop through a list, where we talked about loops, right? There are many ways that you can manipulate lists with loops. List comprehension, very important concept in Python when you're synthesizing for loops with lists. Sorting lists, copying lists, joining lists. So go to this website and practice each of these concepts. Use ChatGPT if you don't understand a specific concept, but don't use ChatGPT to solve the problem for you, otherwise you wouldn't learn. Just use ChatGPT to learn the concept with an example, and then once you understand the concept, then actually try out the exercises. And please try your best to not watch any more tutorials. You can, but I don't want you guys to fall into temptation of watching another 50-hour course on Python. Don't do that. In fact, right now, I hope that you can just pause the video right now and just get started, right? Forget about the video right now, forget about my channel for a little bit, and then actually get practicing, right? Go over this entire list thing and go over this entire dictionary. Those are the only 2 sections I want you guys to practicing right now after watching this video. So you can just get started and get practicing. The entire dictionary section and the entire list section. You can ignore tuples and sets right now if you want. Again, there are many types of data structures out there. Just focus on those 2 right now for today. That's my challenge to you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe, share this video with someone that you think would benefit from it, and would love to learn with you. Best way to learn is through community, through having a partner. But yeah, like, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Done.